So the first film that we're going to review together is Monos by Alejandro Landis. Jim and I both saw that together at the Cameo, but it's out now. Is it at the Cameo? It's all over the UK then.
Yeah, it might still be at the Cameo, but certainly it's as we broadcast, it should be in the middle of a short run at the film house as well.
Oh right, okay. So tell us a little bit about what Monos is about, because it took me a little bit of time in the film to figure out what was going on.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically, so the film's done very well. I think it won Best Film at the London Film Festival. And
oh, really?
Yeah. And basically, the film opens on a group of teenagers who are obviously engaged in some sort of guerrilla warfare type operation. So it's a group of teenagers, boys and girls, and they've kind of got these nicknames which I think are maybe ostensibly meant to evoke part of their personality, but they're Bigfoot and Rambo, Wolf, Lady. I think Boom Boom is another one of them. So they got these, and it opens on a fairly surreal image, which is them playing football blindfolded. And they're kind of staggering around, and you only know a goal has been scored when a bell rings. And then they start interacting with a guy that they only refer to as the messenger. And basically what it turns out is that the messenger is part of this wider organisation which is obviously fighting some sort of battle in this mountainous South American landscape.
Mm-hmm.
So Alejandro Landis, I think, is Colombian, Ecuadorian. Certainly it's got that sort of look about it, like high altitude South American nation. So the messenger is part of this larger organisation, and the group of children that we've been introduced to are the MONOS. That's kind of where the title of the film comes from. And they're clearly teenagers, and they get up to this random teenage stuff almost, like they're asking for permission to become partners and enter into relationships. There's hijinks, there's weird kind of like ritualistic dancing around campfires in the evening. They are also, and this is kind of maybe one of the main drivers of what plot there is, right, because we'll get to that in a minute. They have this, I think she's American, but basically they have a hostage who they only refer to as Doctora. And basically she is in their care, and it's up to them to keep her in good condition. And right at the start of the film, basically what kind of incites the events of it is they've been given a cow by somebody who is sympathetic to their cause, and the messenger gives it to them and says, look, you've been given this, you can use it for milk and all the rest of it, but you have to return the cow at the end, right? No harm can befall this cow. There's not much of a spoiler to say that obviously harm befalls the cow, right? Yeah. And then there's various things that then spin off the back of that. But it's quite a surrealist film. There's not a lot of context given as a crutch, I would say. You don't actually know what country it's in. You don't actually know what it is they're fighting for. You don't really know even what time and place it's taking place in. There are certain hints here and there, right? You can kind of contextualize that it's not, it's not in the distant past or anything, and it's not maybe even that long ago. But it's very devoid of context, just in the way that the characters are, actually.
Yeah. And I think we both kind of walked down in the same thing. Well, I was watching it and thinking, oh, here's a Lord of the Flies story, and then it just kind of turned into Heart of Darkness, Apocalypse Now. And we both exclaimed that. And now if you read something like Peter Bradshaw's 5-star review of it, he says the same thing. So there's so much about this that kind of is, well, you said it has no context, has context of stories and films and whatnot that we've seen in the past, but in a new sort of landscape a bit, because it's South America.
Yeah, it's a slightly different setting and tone, I would say, because you and I both said as we came out, it's very Lord of the Flies meets Apocalypse Now, really. I mean, that's what people will come out of it as kind of the cultural touchstones you'll recognise from it. Where it differs, I suppose, is again that lack of context, and also I think the musical approach as well.
Yeah, it was quite. Who's the composer again?
Michael Levy.
Yeah.
Who is the woman who did well, what I know from is the score that she did for Under the Skin.
Yeah, great film.
She also did it for Jackie, which I've not seen.
I don't like that film. But Natalie Portman. So
but certainly, the music that goes with this, it did very much remind me of Under the Skin, which of course is another film which is kind of like, unsettling, a bit surreal,
Absolutely.
devoid of context, and her score does a lot to sell that sort of tone it's going for. I think if you had a slightly more conventional score, it wouldn't add quite as much to it. It's a very stunning looking film, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute, but for me the main takeaways are the acting. I thought all the teenagers playing those roles were very good, but the musical approach, I think, is really what makes it stick in your head a little bit.
Yeah, the soundscape, it's quite visual, it's beautiful. I don't not need context, but it did take me a while to get engaged in the film, and it was a journey across some Amazonian somewhat landscape, and after a while it didn't grab me, and I don't think I was very sad about the cow, and I thought that was a really sad moment until we'll talk about the other films later. We've picked quite a bunch of depressing films, Jim. So that was only the beginning of what was to come for me in my film experience this month. But yeah, no, it did pick up and get more intense, and sort of like, I think maybe as you learned the character's kind of own free will, and the decision of being part of a pack, or being making personal decisions, and and betrayal, and all those Lord of the Flies kind of things you would expect.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, I would say it did grab me from the start, but if I'm nitpicking, I wouldn't say it necessarily kept that hold particularly well in the start. I mean, as I say, so like the sound design is superb, it looks very good, the acting's great, but it did need that. So I think it's maybe about halfway through the film, there is a change in locale, and basically the way these characters are interacting, there's a bit of a step change, and there's a change in pace as well. I think the film definitely needed that. If it settled into a slightly more contemplative mood for the whole thing, I don't think it would have brought it home quite as well. It needed that acceleration and this kind of like the creeping kind of like Heart of Darkness, madness type thing, and the chaos parts of Lord of the Flies to really bring it on a bit, I think. So it's extremely well done. I don't think I'm quite as, for fear of being contrary, I don't think I'm quite as blown away by it as I've seen a lot of people be, but it's definitely a very accomplished film.
Yeah. I mean, I also definitely didn't always understand the motivations of every character, but then again, maybe it's younger people not knowing what to do, or what decision to make or whatnot, because I mean, I obviously understood Doctora's motivation to get the heck out. Yeah. Which I would, most of that film sometimes I was like, I want to get out of here too. I think
that's the part where the no context kind of worked for me though, because it's more, it's made very clear, I think, that these are quite young characters, and it's more, you can't really figure out what's driving them, because I'm not sure they necessarily know. Right. And it's certainly like you see allegiances within that group kind of like turn on a dime and switch up. So I think in that respect, that's maybe where that lack of context plays to the film's ideas. But as I say, it does need that step change that happens about halfway through the film in order to get those character interactions kicking off, because otherwise it's a little bit, it's interesting and well done, but it's a little bit staid. It needed that introduction of a bit of peril and a change of pace to get those character interactions sparking off the way that I think the latter half of the film does very well, and it needed. Yeah,
I think all told, though, it is a film, that we're both saying, go see, make the decision for yourself. It's beautiful. It's the soundscape is stunning, and it gives you something new.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a very accomplished film. It worked for me. I'm not going to sit here and say it will work for everyone, for the reasons that we've outlined, but it sounds great. It looks great. It's a very good film. I'm not surprised that it's done well on the festival circuit, and I think it's well worth seeing.
Great.